Did you know there's a bird sitting in a research freezer right now with every single feather still in place from 46,000 years ago, frozen so precisely that scientists can tell you its exact color? That's the kind of thing permafrost does. It doesn't just preserve bodies, it preserves entire moments, sealed shut the instant they happened, waiting for someone to accidentally crack them back open. Today we're counting down 8 of the strangest, most bizarre animals Siberia's frozen ground has ever given back, starting with the mildest and working our way up to the one researchers still can't fully explain. 8. The saiga antelope, an alien face. That never changed, scattered across the Siberian permafrost, researchers have recovered multiple mummified remains of saiga antelope, a species that still exists today but looks almost nothing like a normal antelope should. Its most distinctive feature, an oddly swollen, trunk-like nose built to filter dust and warm freezing air before it reaches the lungs, is still clearly visible on specimens tens of thousands of years old. What makes the saiga discoveries genuinely bizarre isn't decay or violence, it's how little has changed. Modern saiga antelope, currently critically endangered and found mostly in Kazakhstan, still have that same strange, staining swollen nose today, meaning permafrost mummies let scientists compare an animal's face directly against its own descendants across a gap of more than 30,000 years with almost no difference at all. That inflated nose works almost like a built-in air conditioner, warming freezing air in winter and filtering dust in summer. And frozen specimens confirm the adaptation was already fully developed over 30,000 years ago. In a list full of extinct species and creatures the modern world has never seen alive, the saiga is the one entry that proves something can survive completely unchanged since the Ice Age and still be walking around today, looking exactly as strange as it always did. It's a small reminder that not every Ice Age animal disappeared. Some of them just kept going, wearing the same face, while everything around them went extinct. Modern saiga populations have also crashed catastrophically more than once in recent decades due to disease outbreaks, which makes these permafrost mummies even more valuable, since they're effectively a genetic backup of what the species looked like before it came anywhere close to vanishing for good. The saiga barely made this list, honestly, because nothing about it decayed strangely or turned up in pieces. But keep that in mind, because number 7 is where things stop looking so normal. 7. The Yukagir bison, a mummy with its hump. Still standing in 2011, hunters in Yakutia discovered the frozen body of an adult male steppe bison, so well preserved that his distinctive muscular hump, the same feature seen in modern American bison, was still standing upright exactly as it would have looked in life. The mummy was nicknamed the Yukagir bison, and it remains one of the most complete adult steppe bison specimens ever recovered from permafrost anywhere in the world. His horns, fur, and hooves were all fully intact, and researchers were able to study his internal organs directly. Isotope testing on his tissue let researchers reconstruct nearly a full year of his diet before death, tracking seasonal shifts between dry grasses and richer summer vegetation, essentially reading his last 12 months like a calendar written into his own cells. He showed no signs of predation at all, leading most researchers to believe he simply succumbed to the cold or disease during a harsh winter, then sank into waterlogged ground that froze solid around him before decomposition could set in. What stood out most to researchers wasn't a single dramatic detail, but the sheer completeness of the specimen. Nearly every part of him that should have decayed within weeks under normal conditions had instead survived essentially unchanged for tens of thousands of years, giving scientists their clearest look yet at an animal that once roamed across an enormous swath of the ancient world in herds numbering in the millions, before the species vanished entirely. Steppe bison once ranged from Western Europe all the way across the Bering Land Bridge into North America, and specimens this complete give researchers a rare chance to compare populations separated by thousands of miles. A calm death, in other words. Number 6 isn't about death at all. It's about something that should have fallen apart in weeks, and somehow didn't. 6. The Ice Age bird that still has its feathers. In the Belaya Gora region of Siberia, researchers recovered the frozen body of a horned lark, a small tundra songbird that died roughly 46,000 years ago. It remains one of the best preserved Ice Age birds ever discovered anywhere on Earth. Its feet, its claws, and almost its entire set of feathers were still attached and intact, keeping their original coloring well enough for scientists to identify the exact species on site. Bird remains almost never survive this way. Feathers and hollow, lightweight bones are usually among the first things to disappear once an animal dies, which is part of why the fossil record for Ice Age birds is so much thinner than it is for mammals like mammoths and bison. This lark somehow avoided that entirely, frozen quickly enough that its plumage never had the chance to fall apart. When scientists sequenced its DNA, they found it was closely related to two horned lark populations that live thousands of miles apart today, one in Siberia and one much farther west. That single bird turned out to be a genetic snapshot of a time when both of those populations were still one continuous group, spread across a single unbroken belt of Ice Age grassland that doesn't exist anymore. A bird that shouldn't have survived intact for even a few years somehow made it 46,000. Number 5 is the opposite kind of strange. Something that didn't just survive, but left behind proof of exactly how it suffered. 5. The Berezovka mammoth, frozen with lunch still in his mouth. In 1901, a hunter in the Kolyma River basin stumbled onto a massive shape sticking out of an eroding riverbank. It was an adult male woolly mammoth, and when a full scientific expedition finally reached the site, his flesh was still red, his stomach was still full, and wedged between his teeth were buttercups and grasses he had been chewing the moment he died. Scientists reconstructed his death almost minute by minute. The ground beneath him had likely given way at the edge of a ravine, and he fell hard enough to shatter his pelvis and several ribs on impact, an injury severe enough that he likely couldn't have gotten back up even if the cold hadn't set in. He may have still been alive, pinned and unable to move, when the surrounding earth and snow buried him completely, and the cold finished the job. Music researchers had to build a wooden shelter directly over the carcass just to keep it from thawing too fast in the brief Siberian summer, and the smell alone reportedly overwhelmed the excavation crew, since even after 44,000 years, a body that size doesn't thaw out clean. His mounted remains are still on display in St. Petersburg today, over 120 years later. His last meal, still undigested after 44,000 years, let botanists reconstruct exactly what plant life covered that part of Siberia at the end of the Ice Age. The Berezovka mammoth was the first frozen mammoth ever studied by a full scientific team, and he's credited with kicking off the wave of serious permafrost research that led directly to almost every other discovery on this list. He died trapped and in agony, and that's already hard to sit with. But number 4 isn't a death at all. It's a brain. 4. The Yukagir mammoth head, an adult brain in a block of ice. In 2002, a family of reindeer herders near the Yukagir Plateau found something jutting out of a frozen slope that made them stop in their tracks. An enormous mammoth head, both tusks still curved and attached, staring straight out of the ice. It turned out to be one of the best preserved adult mammoth heads ever discovered on Earth. Inside, the brain was still there, shrunken, but structurally intact, giving neuroscientists an actual physical mammoth brain to study, instead of relying purely on elephant comparisons the way researchers always had before. What made the find especially eerie wasn't just the size, it was the expression. With the skin and muscle still wrapped around the skull, The head didn't look like a specimen. It looked like an animal that had simply stopped moving mid-stride, tusks lowered, still staring at whoever found it first. Scans of the brain suggested mammoths had complex elephant-like social regions tied to memory, meaning that when this one died, there was very likely a herd nearby that noticed he was gone. The tusks alone were heavy enough that specialists needed machinery just to remove the skull from the hillside without damaging them, and the skull now sits in a research facility kept permanently below freezing, because the moment climate control fails, the decomposition that took 40,000 years off would resume within days. It's one of the only mammoth specimens where scientists can genuinely say they've studied the animal's mind rather than just its bones. A head with no body and a mind that technically still exists. Number 3 takes that idea and makes it personal. 3. Dima. The baby mammoth that started a cloning debate decades early. In 1977, a bulldozer operator working a gold mine near Magadan scraped his blade against something soft. It was a baby woolly mammoth, roughly 7 to 8 months old, so completely preserved that scientists could still see individual eyelashes and the folds of skin around his trunk. He was named Dima, and he became the first baby mammoth in history studied in this kind of anatomical detail. His organs and muscle tissue were intact enough for researchers to determine he had likely died of starvation and exposure, after slipping into a bog he couldn't climb out of. His cells were in good enough condition that scientists spent years debating whether his DNA might one day bring the species back, decades before cloning technology existed in any real form. Later analysis even revealed his age, and sex had been misidentified for years, a mistake only corrected once better testing methods finally caught up to him. Dima toured research institutions across the Soviet Union and later internationally, treated less like a fossil and more like a diplomatic artifact, shuttled between labs under tight security. He predates every other famous baby mammoth discovery by decades, and it's largely because of Dima that mammoth de-extinction went from a fringe idea to a serious research goal that scientists are still chasing today. Dima is the reason mammoth cloning became a serious scientific goal instead of science fiction. Number 2 is the reason scientists started asking an even darker question. What happens when the body itself gets left behind? 2. The mammoth trunk with no body attached. In 2020, researchers surveying permafrost deposits in Yakutia came across something that, at first glance, made no sense at all. A fully preserved woolly mammoth trunk, skin and muscle intact, with no head, no tusks, and no body anywhere nearby. It was simply lying in the frozen ground on its own, disconnected from every other part of the animal it once belonged to. Scientists still aren't entirely sure how a piece this large ended up separated from its owner, with theories ranging from scavenger activity to the trunk being torn loose during a flood before the site fully froze over. An elephant's trunk contains no bone at all, built instead from tens of thousands of individual muscles, and having an actual mammoth trunk to dissect, let researchers map exactly how it functioned as a gripping, breathing, drinking organ, something no skeleton could ever show. Search teams have combed the surrounding area since, but the rest of the animal has never turned up. It remains one of the strangest permafrost discoveries on record, less because of what it revealed scientifically and more because of the image itself. A fully intact trunk, lying alone in the ice, with absolutely nothing attached to it, as if the rest of the mammoth simply walked off and left it behind. Complete mammoth skeletons are actually far more common in the fossil record than complete soft tissue, which makes this discovery backwards in the strangest possible way. Researchers usually have the bones and are missing the flesh, but here they had detailed, functional soft tissue and nothing else at all. A body part with no owner is unsettling on its own. But number 1 isn't missing anything at all. It's a body with absolutely nothing wrong with it. And that's exactly what makes it the hardest one to explain. 1. Sparta, possibly the best preserved Ice Age animal ever found. In 2018, tusk hunters searching the banks of the Yukagir River in Siberia found something that made even experienced fossil hunters go quiet: a cave lion cub, so flawlessly preserved that researchers later called her possibly the best preserved Ice Age animal ever discovered anywhere on the planet. She was named Sparta, frozen for an estimated 28,000 years. Every whisker was in place. Her fur was soft enough to run a hand through. Her teeth, claws, and even the delicate skin around her nose showed no decay whatsoever, an almost impossible level of preservation for an animal that old. And here's the part that unsettled researchers most. There was no visible cause of death anywhere on her body. No wound, no trauma, nothing. The leading theory is that she was buried alive in a sudden den collapse, suffocating before decomposition ever had the chance to begin. Isotope analysis confirmed she was still nursing when she died, meaning she never tasted solid meat, never took part in a hunt, never became the apex predator her species was built to be. And strangest of all, she was found only a short distance from two other frozen cave lion cubs discovered years earlier and decades apart, as if this exact patch of Siberian riverbank has been quietly burying lion families for tens of thousands of years running. A second cub, later named Boris, turned up nearby from a completely different layer of permafrost, confirming this stretch of ground had been used as a den site across multiple, wildly separated generations. Researchers still don't have a clean explanation for why this one location keeps giving up cubs this perfectly preserved, or how many more might still be sitting in the ground around it, waiting for the next thaw to finally let them go.